Well, good morning. I am nearly home. There's an idea of being home somewhere in the world, I guess, but got the heater on this morning. It's a very chilly morning. You can see your breath. So I did want to make this video yesterday, actually. I thought about it, pulling over on the side of the road, and but Australia being such a big continent, once you get going, once you get travelling and moving along, you have so many miles to go that you sort of don't feel like pulling over just for anything really, except the essentials, food, petrol, whatever. But anyway, yesterday I finished with the shift I was going through. It seems I finished with the shift I was going through, and normally when you have a release of energy, and when you're consciously releasing energy, when you know that you're going through something and you can feel it and it's stirring and it's awful and it feels like you're going to choke or whatever, you'll feel it in your stomach or in your throat. Normally you have these kind of, when you give it to the Holy Spirit, you have this kind of outburst where you'll start crying, or especially in the beginning stages of transformation, you just fed up with your life and fed up with the way things are going, and you want change. And I think in the other video I said it's like unclogging a pipe, which is a pretty accurate way to describe it. And a little bit of energy starts to get through, then all of a sudden, whoosh, the floodgates open, and it all comes out at once, and you don't know what to do with it. So like you have this sort of emotional baggage, if you want to call it, releasing, and at the same time, because you're consciously aware of it, you're not worried about it particularly. You're drawing your circle and you be still, and you're just allowing it for it to happen, whatever it looks like. And usually that'll look like crying or laughing or sometimes vomiting, or any kind of physical response through the vessel, because the vessel is made as a defense against the truth initially. As those defenses against truth, which are all mental, as they get reinterpreted, the cosmology, if you like, of the body, of the vessel as an idea, get also reinterpreted right down to the cellular level, and it's like the signature of the cells gets rewritten, or not rewritten, but unwritten from false impressions. Rosie used to call it karmic imprints. So, but and that stuff gets released, and it's a process. It's like, but this particular one that the last few days I've been through, there doesn't seem to have been much of that. It's like a lot of laughing, I guess, sporadically whilst driving, which is quite common for me anyway. Just feeling good, being with Jesus, being with the Spirit, driving the truck, and just feeling so damn good, you just burst out into laughter and feeling so amazing. And yeah, that's really cool. But this particular, like, there hasn't been any, and I think the last, it's hard to identify shifts when they're occurring all the time, when the nature of healing is ongoing. In the beginning, when you first start doing those workbook lessons, when you first start saying yes to everything instead of defending yourself against what life is presenting you, the nature of your denial becomes obvious. But as you go through it, and as you get through what you need to get through in that primary sort of stage, it just becomes the way things are. and communication like that. Becomes more natural. So anyway, that was that. So there doesn't seem to have been anything particular. So, which is kind of nice. As for the gifts of the Spirit, etc., I think I said in my last video, one of my last videos, every shift you go through, you kind of reopen yourself to awareness of your true sense of self, which shows up in this world as that subtle frequency. You start to feel something on a more intrinsic level, and with that often comes the gifts of the Spirit, which usually transfers to the idea of healing. But who knows? I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday or day before yesterday, and we were kind of like laughing together that thank goodness that the Spirit is like the wind. You don't know where it comes from and where it goes. It's like if you did, you'd get in the way. You'd try and second guess Spirit and try to produce miracles consciously. And of course, the ego is not miracle minded. It learns to become miracle minded as it recognizes in each situation that its own best interests is non-judgment and learning to step back and ask for higher guidance. But of itself, it is not miracle minded. It has no recourse to miracles of itself. Miracles come from the higher level. There's a good little heater. It's sort of, put my back to it there without catching myself on fire. My false self on fire. Some by fire and some by flood. So anyway, so that's it. I don't have a lot to say today. I just want, because a few people I know have sort of been following along with this shift, and some people have said, man, I can feel it. I can really feel this energy. And as Christ mind, as one mind waking up, then yep, you will feel the energy. You will feel that light shifting. It's not actually shifting in you in a physical sense. It's shifting, or it's what would you call it? Starting to re-express, recreate from the core, from the source. Because if you're a Course in Miracles student, you'll be aware that Jesus says, into eternity where all is one, crept a tiny mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. So it's occurring in eternity. Right now, you might say, well, eternity is a singular state. How can anything occur there? And, well, how can any tiny mad idea occur there? Or crept in there? And it's like, you can't double down on working out what is going on, not going on in another state of mind, in another dimension of mind, in another paradigm of mind, with the conscious mind, which is what we're given to work with here in this dimension. It doesn't matter how many spiritual gurus you follow who tell you this is possible or this is impossible or whatever. It's like, just forget about it. You'll just do your head in. Just accept that Jesus is in charge. And I've had many questions. I mean, I've been in the eternal realm. I remember it. I've had my awakening, and I have no clue. It is definitely above my pay grade. It's me. I am the creative source of all that is, one with all things, one with you, and an equal part of all creation. Yes. What happened as far as the tiny mad idea goes? No idea. But I can remember eternity perfectly. I remember eternity perfectly, and it's beautiful, and I don't want to be here. Let's say, if it weren't for the atonement, my assignment, as my teacher used to call it. And I'm only fairly new at this. I mean, I look at the idea of people like Krishnamurti, for example, Jiddu Krishnamurti, and like he's an old man. When I first came across his teachings in 1980 or whenever it was, or 1990. But he was raised by the Star of India since the age of 5 years old. They adopted him as an orphan boy and raised him to be the coming Messiah. What a load to put on his shoulders. But from the age of 5 to the age of however old he was, well into his 80s, I would imagine. For me, this has only been 26 years. It's just sort of been thrust into the limelight. I've been pushed out into the bloody... And the first half of, 26 years, I guess for the first 13 years at least, I've been scrambling in my brain to make sense of what occurred in 1997 and to integrate that into my temporal psychology to be able to become somewhat useful, somewhat helpful. So I'm only a newbie, really. When most people think of an enlightened teacher or someone who's had an experience, and I should say there is not really any such thing as an enlightened mind. It's like all mind is enlightened, all mind is awake, but it would probably be better and to reterm that now in classical, from classical terms as a remembered mind or a remembering mind. We talk about it as awakening, and that's fine, but I think anyway, I might sit with that. I mean, it does, there's so much confusion especially when you get into these more transcendental technologies from the Eastern countries, and they generally don't have a great lien on transformation. They tend to be more transcendental and, like Buddhism, try to rise above the issue without actually dealing with the issue, which is spiritual avoidance or spiritual bypassing that we call in the West. It's like, you've got to do the work, but I sometimes feel that as a representative of our Father's love on earth, that I could probably do a better job. I don't know how. I mean, I look at guys like Muji and they just wander around all day with their hands together and smiling and whatever. I could do that. And I love Muji. Muji's wonderful, but that's a more Eastern sort of thing, whereas this, when Helen and Jesus were talking in the early days of scribing the Course, when she was channeling it, Jesus told her clearly, this is for the Western mind, not the Eastern mind. This is for the Western mind that is completely miscombobulated or discombobulated the teachings of A Course in the Bible, that completely misunderstood. He even goes as far as to say that many religions would not bless or would not liberate, but they damn in heaven's name. It's like, ooh, scything, that's a bit harsh, but that's Jesus. They damn in heaven's name. So it's like they make they make you out to be guilty for something in order to save you. And whereas Jesus says, no, you're not guilty for anything. You're already saved. You are already whole. You are already perfect. Let's just dump all the other stuff that you believe about yourself to the contrary and forgive that, move on, and have an experience of your perfection. And you learn to live from spirit, not from coming to spirit, but from the fact that you actually already are spirit. I am spirit. That's it. I very often confuse myself with the avatar. I mean, it's entirely confusable. I'm sure everybody does. But there's this self-corrective principle in play through the atonement that throughout the day, the prompts and the reminders and the bringing, like your finger coming back on your nose, it really is self-correcting. So I hope I'm I'm doing a good job. I often have people say to me how clear it is that I'm kind of like self-analyzing here a little bit, but I often have people say to me how clear my expression is with regards to this material. And then I sometimes have people say they've got no clue what I'm talking about. And that's common. If it's not your time, or if you're not ready for this stuff, then it doesn't matter how many teachers you sit in front of, you're not going to have any clue what's being said. You're going to sit there, and because you understand that this is the highest sort of thing, and that you've got to sort of get there eventually, you're going to think that you're part of it, and that you're, how would I put this? I want to be a little bit sensitive here. There's an orchestration to things, you know. So if you're listening to my videos and you're sitting there and you're really like, I mean, go out into the world. I mean, stop listening to my videos. Sometimes there's an orchestration to things that has to occur, right, in the world. And I won't say sometimes, all the time, really. There's an orchestration of things that has to occur that prepare you or bring you to a place where your mind is open enough to be able to receive this information, this technology, in the way that I'm imparting it. So when I tell you that you're whole and perfect as God created you, you're not doing backflips trying to kind of figure out what that is, because it's only the mind that is in denial trying to figure it out. Right? Now, the mind in denial doesn't know what it is. The mind in denial is ego mind, or that temporal mind. It doesn't know what it is, so there's no point in trying to figure it out. But for some of you guys, the weight on the side of the scales that represents denial is going to be too strong for you to get out of your own way, and you'll sit there thinking you know what's being said rather than actually hearing what's being said. So in some cases, it's helpful to go back out into the world and just live a while, you know, just have relationships, go through the trials and traumas of everyday life, and just do your best with it, rather than to focus too much on studying the curriculum that seems to be constantly avoiding you and causing you more stress. You know, and I do know people that get very stressed out with this, and it doesn't seem to come naturally, or doesn't seem to be something they pick up on at all in any simple kind of a way. And I think if it were me in that regard, and I once was in that regard, I remember clearly before my illumination that there was things about the spiritual wherewithal of the universal curriculum that I just didn't get. And my life prior to illumination was very painful in one regard, because I was trying to sedate myself from my rambling mind with drugs and alcohol, and at the same time I was on the search. You know, so it was like I was running up and down this mental hallway, going from maybe God's in here, and then coming back to, no, God's not in there, I'll go and get drunk again. Because there's something in me and something in you that knows what you resonate with, right? It's a natural feeling, and if it's not natural, if it doesn't flow for you, if it's not easy, then maybe step back for a second, step back and ask, like, you know. And I've had a lot of people tell me that they pick up the course and they instinctively know, oh, I'm not ready for this yet. Right? They'll read a few pages and they'll be like, this is heavy stuff, this is really technical, this is really beyond the pay grade where I'm at right now, and they'll put it on their shelf. And I've had people tell me it's been on their shelf for 20 years, and then because they watch one of my videos, they get prompted to pick up the book again, and in the span of that 20 years, something in the orchestration of their everyday lives has brought about some kind of shift, and they can read it again, right? They can read the book. So I mean, you have to feel your own way with that, but it's kinda, and more along the lines of grace, to be true to thyself, right? Rather than try to be true to something that you're forcing. So if this is not coming naturally, put it aside and include the idea that you're putting it aside for a minute into your spiritual discipline, right? So that what you do instead of this, what you do instead of your daily lessons and whatever that you might be struggling really hard with, also falls under the auspices of mind training, also falls under the auspices of following instructions and being true to thyself, right? Because you have to be true to thyself, no matter what that is, all right? And bless you either way. But I do my best to try and present this as a broad acre teaching, because I know that every day there's probably somebody watching one of these videos for the very first time and they're sitting like thinking, what the hell's this guy on about? But I also know that it doesn't take generally more than 3 or 4 videos or 3 or 4 encounters with singular truth presented in a very reasonable way before the mind starts to go, aha, I see what's going on here, and begin to open up and activate itself with regards to self-participation in that idea of to thyself be true, because they recognize that, aha, this is the next step, this is the next thing for me, this is what I've been looking for, right? So I do want to really make that definition, and I'm not saying that, go away, like Jesus, when Jesus is walking around the edge of Lake, the Dead Sea, and he turns around to the masses following him and he says, go away, go back to your homes. You don't want what I'm offering. You just want the miracles, the bread and the fish and the healings. And of course, the bread and the fish and the healings are only symbolic forms that he's presenting to show that what he's talking about is actually matter of fact. And they turned away en masse by the thousands and went back to their homes, leaving only those who could hear and those who could see to follow him. And Jesus said 2 in 10,000 will hear this. And I think we're up to about 510,000 now. And it's much easier with the Course in Miracles. If you're a New Testament scholar or somebody who's been plodding that path for a long time, you probably will find great success through the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount and the Acts of the Disciples. I find particularly encouraging, but even some of the letters, But A Course in Miracles, if you've been reading Sermon on the Mount for a long time, and then you read A Course in Miracles, everything falls into place. Everything just goes drop in, drop in, drop in, and boom, boom, boom. It's amazing. So I've been promising myself to read the book of Matthew from start to finish again for a while now. So once I get back home, I think I'm going to dig into that. But one of the things, apart from, and this is really cool, and whether you believe that those teachings in from the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Peshitta texts and everything like that, whether you believe they're actually true or not, or whether you've got judgment about them or not, or anything like that, that doesn't matter. Because when you read them, when you read those accounts, and they are the accounts of the scribes that went with the disciples, because remember, the disciples were just fishermen and tax collector and all of that sort of thing. So they weren't scholars. So they had scribes that accompanied them to write down what they saw and what they said and what was said. But when you read the New Testament, right, and I'm drawing a clear line between old and new here, when you read the New Testament, if you connect with the person, the story, the expression, there is a familiarity, and it's beautiful. There's a beautiful familiarity about the association, the emotional, energetic association that comes forth, that is tangible. You can taste it in the air. It's as if you've been there. It's like you can put yourself in the desert with the Savior. And that very simply, and like I've had a few people tell me that, and I always experience it, but I've had a few people tell me that as well, and I read the book of the Essenes once, and that did the same. That did exactly the same for me, which is kind of how I know that's a true wording. Oh man. There's a mental association with the resurrection that it affects everybody because you were there. You were there. You saw it happen. Because there is only one mind waking up. And the witness to truth is universal because it's truth. Truth is universal, and it's in you. So what is affected in one is done in all. You know, it's like Jesus atoned for the sins of all humanity. In his mind, when he resurrected as an individual entity, let's say, making that demonstration, that resurrection, because it occurred remember, his body was only the symbol. It actually occurred in eternity. It actually occurred in mind, where he woke up, where he ascended and completely became one with the Father. It actually occurred in you as well, because we share that single mind. So when you... man, this is so cool. When you begin to gravitate and navigate closer to that point of total transformation in your mind, you become that Bedouin, you become that Aramaic speaking association, which is why people often get the Messiah complex. Like, I completely understand that. You know, when I've met someone, God bless him, who swore black and blue he was Jesus, and in one regard he was completely correct, and in another regard, well, no, I'm actually an association of the Christ. I'm actually the Christ, of which we all are, no one different from any other. We're all equal. All men are equal. But you can get pretty fucked up having a spiritual experience. You know, like if you're not ready for a revelation and it occurs to you, your ego will twist and turn and manipulate the identity that you have of yourself now to try and incorporate it. And if it's not incorporated through the grace of God, you can bet you're going to do some time in the nut house. You've got to really follow the prompts, follow the instruction, and be guided by the divine, you know, like, you got to let it happen. You got to be willing to step back and let God lead. I will step back and let him lead the way today. I think that's one of the lessons in the course. So anyway, that's it. I know a lot of you guys are going to really enjoy this video. I can feel it in my gut. There's a lot of energy with this one. Holy damn, there's a lot of energy with this one. This is beautiful. This is just beautiful. For those of you who truly feel this, eat the bread, drink the wine. I love you.